I want to know where the
Oh, next year we have
It's probably after the consummation.
yeah, that's just there's so much fun when you get up and leave. There was a time when I watched well, it's just a shame that
A motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
So moved. Second.
Motion made by Mrs. Walker, seconded by Mr. Lang. By roll call.
Ms. Walker?
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 7-0. Next on our agenda is recognitions. Mr. Dykeman.
Thank you, Mrs. Cope. If I could have the Francis Howell Viking swim relay team to come on up, please. It was a great season for the Lady Vikings this year. For the first time in program history, the girls swim team finished in the Final Four at state. The highlight of the meet, that's worth it. The highlight of the meet was the 200 free relay team of Emma Brabham, Natalie Wynn, Madison Wynn, and Reagan Cathcart. They won the state championship and set a new Misha state record with a time of 1 minute, 32 seconds, and 32 100ths in the 200. Congratulations to Emma, Natalie, Madison, and Reagan on the state championship and for representing Howell in such a positive way. And congratulations to the entire Viking swim team on a great season. Congratulations, ladies. If I could have the Francis Howell High School Golden Girls come up, please. The Francis Howell High School Golden Girls dance team has, again, been crowned state champions at the Missouri Dance Team Association state competition. This is the third time in the last 4 years that the team has won the Class 6 state championship and the 6th state title in the last 9 years for this dance dynasty. get old, ladies? No. The season started with some disappointments, and the team knew that their dance routines needed to be updated. They changed their choreography and challenged themselves that no matter what, right? No matter what, they would give everything they had on the dance floor, and that's exactly what they did. At state, the Golden Girls took first place for their lyrical jazz and hip-hop performances, which secured their position at the top as the 2018 overall state champions. Once again, your Golden Girls. You can tell they've posed for more than one group picture. See you next year, ladies. If I could have Karen Brady and our substitutes come up, please. Our substitutes are often the unsung heroes of our district. Many times they are called on at the last minute to provide much needed support for our staff and our students. In some cases, they have no idea what their assignment will be when they arrive for work in the morning, and yet with a helpful attitude, they jump right in to provide the support and help our students need. A strong substitute can alleviate the fears a teacher has when he or she knows that they must miss a day of work. Being able to rely on our subs, knowing instruction will continue, and that their class will be cared for is very important. Tonight, we would like to recognize some of our hardworking substitute teachers. Jim Edwards. Jim has been subbing for the district since 2005 and has worked 103 days this year. Julia Dale. Julia has been subbing for us since 2009 and has also worked 103 days this year. Linda Tennant has been subbing since August and has subbed 74 days this year. And Beth Grata has also been subbing since August and has subbed for 94 days this year. We also have one of our sub-nurses, Nicole Halstead. She's been subbing since 2015 and has subbed for 79 days this year. Also, our substitute specialist, Karen Brady, is also here with us this evening. She works each morning to ensure that our positions are filled with great substitutes like those we have here tonight. Thank you, Karen, for all of your hard work and dedication.
Mr. Edwards.
Thank you, Mrs. Coe.
All right, next on our agenda is patron comments. So during patron comments, patrons are invited to address the Board of Education. Please come to the podium so everyone can hear. Please adhere to the 3-minute time limit. The board is interested in hearing the public's concerns and opinions, but we do not answer patron questions during the meeting. Questions and concerns will be addressed by Dr. Mary Hendricks Harris and other appropriate staff members. Please remember that comments about individual students and staff are not allowed due to confidentiality. These concerns need to be brought to the administration's attention and may be brought to the board in closed session. So first this evening, I would like to invite Skylar Laird to the podium.
I'm Skylar Laird, and I recently published an editorial on our website, fhctoday.com, and I wanted to read it here tonight. So, dear everyone who voted no on Prop Learn, I don't think you're all horrible people. I'm sure when you walked into that voting booth, you didn't think, how can I make life a little more difficult for every high school in the area? There are lots of valid reasons to vote no. Maybe it was because you can't afford a tax increase. Maybe you disagree with the district's financial decisions. Maybe you just saw that your taxes would increase and decided your money was more worthwhile to you than the community around you. Besides, your vote doesn't even matter, right? How much could the district even need this levy? You couldn't see the repercussions when you looked at those boxes and picked no. All you could see was what it meant for you, an increase in taxes. And who in their right mind would voluntarily raise their own taxes, especially if it didn't even benefit them? But the fact of the matter is that this no will impact you. If you and all the voters from other districts continue to check no on these education funds, you'll see the cracks begin to form. As a student, I see them every day I go to school. I see your vote and the kids sitting in the very back of classrooms crammed at a table because there are no desks left for them in rooms packed past capacity. These multitudes of students fall through the cracks forming as teachers lack the time to work individually with every one of their 120 plus kids, allowing students to struggle silently without notice from the teacher simply because they are so outnumbered by the sheer amount of students they must teach. I see your vote in these same exhausted teachers working harder than they've ever had to for frozen wages, doing everything they can to help their multitudes of students for far less than the pay they deserve. Some work part-time jobs outside of school, most have families, all teach day after day. They come in early and stay late, teaching more and more students as budget cuts cause their coworkers to lose their jobs and don't allow for more help to be hired to ease the armfuls of essays and homework assignments they take home every night. I see your vote in the newly imposed activity fee, requiring every student who joins any sport or club, regardless of how big it is or how expensive it is, or how often it meets, to pay $40 simply to participate. I see it in the stressed faces of kids who don't have $40 to spare and are now being threatened with being kicked out of their favorite club, a reason for them to come to school every day. I see it in the pained faces of parents who want their child to be able to participate, who want them to be in extracurriculars, but now aren't so sure because they can't pay the price. I see it in the money coming from students' own pockets to make up for what money was cut from the district itself. I see your vote in the fear and rumors that haunt the school and the talk of other schools that had to face budget cuts and then cut this team or that one, schools that stopped being able to afford an art program or a music program or new textbooks for the science classes. I see it in the students who worry that their team, their club will be cut next, and in the already faulty equipment that the school doesn't have money to repair or replace. I see it in the fear that there won't be enough money to fund my favorite clubs anymore, or that the ones who already don't have enough money to function will be cut even further to make more room in the budget for bigger activities or even just basic necessities. I see it in the decisions the district has to make, sacrificing one thing for another because money is tight. Where you checked that box, where you saw nothing but a tax raise, I see the faults of public education, of a district in which budget cuts happen year after year. Those of us who have to face the consequences of your no every day see your vote in these snowballing issues, each one adding up until eventually we will have nothing left. I'm sure you had your reasons for picking no, but those reasons aren't enough to fill in the cracks forming around us. Those reasons can't fund a district. Those reasons can't help every child from the age of 5 to 18. Only a yes can do that. Sincerely, those who feel your no every day.
Thank you, Skylar. Next we have David Grunfeld.
Rodenfeld, yes.
Thank you.
My name's David Gronefeld, and I'd like to thank the board for the opportunity to speak tonight. I have been a participant in the district. I started my grade school career at Becky David in 1970. I then went to Daniel Boone for a couple of years. I attended Hollenbeck Junior High School, and I graduated in 1982 from Francis Howell. I then returned in 1988 to become a teacher, science teacher. And so I'm familiar with the district, and I've been familiar with it for quite a while. A couple of years ago, we received a bottle of water that had a label on it indicating you are the degree, 211 to 212 degrees Fahrenheit. And I find the sentiment and the idea on this bottle very appropriate for teaching. It suggests that teachers are the impulse that provide students the ability to reach their potential. It hits the mark in that regard, and I took the sentiment very, very well in that regard. But it also has a misconception that I think is particularly appropriate to the educational situation as well. And that is, 211 to 212 is 1 degree in temperature. But it implies that when you get to 212, that something important happens. And that would be the water turns to steam. The energy that it takes to go from 211 to 212 is about a half of a nutritional calorie. And if you invest that much energy into that sample of water, it will go from 211 to 212, but it will not convert into steam. It will just be warmer water. In order to get that same amount of water to convert to steam, you would have to invest another 540 nutritional calories, which is many, many times more than what it is. When you do that, if you do invest that amount of energy into it, the thermometer will still read 212. There will be no indication in that thermometer that it is changed at all, other than it is now steam. Then we get all the benefits of the steam in terms of driving the Industrial Revolution, turning a turbine, energizing a whole society, and even the world. And I do believe that that is a good sentiment, and that is what teachers do. They provide that impulse that converts to steam. But that is all latent. It is not seen. It is not recognized. It takes a very astute observer to recognize that that is being input at all. It is not recognized by
Thank
many.
you. Your time is up.
I'm sorry. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Grunfeld. Next, we have Timothy Dolan.
Thank you.
I will take it.
I'll let me pull it up and you can have the phone.
Oh, no.
Yeah, you can. I think, read it first, if y'all like it. Okay. Thank you. I'm a little nervous. I don't do this very often. I've spoken to bigger crowds, but none more important than this one. So with that said, and getting right to the point, Skylar, that was an excellent piece. Very good job. I was one of the people that voted no, and that's why I'm here. I read Mr. Supple's piece yesterday in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, and I also read the superintendent's piece after the election. And I don't think a lot of fair coverage was given to the people that voted no. And that's why I'm here tonight. I want to say that understand and respect decisions that voters made. And I hope that everyone here will respect those decisions that the voters made. We're in this boat together. I got it. I understand. His point about doing more with less, well, folks, we have to. We don't have a choice. We're on money. We got to live within our means. And that's one of the things I want to point out tonight is we're not a Ladue school district. Most of the homes in this community are 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-car garage ranch homes, 2,200 square feet or less. Our property values have gone up in the past 4 years. That's one of the reasons why people voted no. And I'm here to share that. In his piece, he didn't understand why. I don't understand the benchmarks sometimes that school districts and other taxing districts use. I do understand the ones from the Federal Reserve, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and some other benchmarks, but I don't understand why we don't use those. My father, his Social Security increase was only 0.2%. Well, somebody that only gets a 0.2% is not gonna vote yes. They're not going to. After their property tax went up, they're sliding down a greased rope. So that's one of the reasons why I think people voted no. I'm not even on a fixed income, but I will be soon. So I'm gonna try to wind this up with that minute behind me. My taxes have gone up since 2013. I've been a member of this school district for 11 years now. So with that going forward and being on the positive side of things, trying to do more with less. I do know one thing, the student population's not going up that much. It's really not. I do know this. We have a lot of new commercial activity in the school district. Francis Howell got a lot of pay raises at a time when other taxing districts did not get raises. And I question those benchmarks, what those raises were, and I will continue to question those benchmarks, why those percentages were that rate. Yes, I'm proud that we have the highest paid teachers in St. Charles County. Post-Dispatch would disagree with you. Then call the Post-Dispatch, okay? Okay.
Check your facts.
I will.
Facts right.
I will. Thank you. I know it's gonna be a tough time going forward, and cost cutting will probably have to occur. But yes, I think if everyone in this room. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dolan. All right, board, next on our agenda is the approval of the consent agenda. I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as submitted. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, hello.
FHEA, I apologize.
Oh, you do?
Very, I apologize.
Hello, Paul Twombly, FHEA. Good evening, President Cope, members of the board, members of the family. We're here to report the results of the voting for our tentative agreement. Voting closed today at noon with the following results. 80% of our members rejected the agreement, with over 85% of our members casting a ballot. It is our hope that you will direct the administration and you yourself will return to the table to discuss another solution that is agreeable to all parties. Thank you, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Good evening, President Coe, members of the Board of Education, and the Executive Cabinet. Our students deserve the best education we can offer. The students of today deserve every opportunity to become the most successful, independent individuals that they can be. We need to educate the students we have now, which means it is time to invest in the staff that we have today. We understand the analogy of only having so much pie to go around. Yet, we continue to add programs we may not be able to sustain, and that we do not have a wide reach of our students. Today you are being asked to approve the hiring of an architect firm to assess our long-term building needs at a higher rate than we pay a teacher. As we think about the pie analogy, and we watch the district recommend committing $1.6 million to capital projects for the next school year, which is more than $1.4 million more than this school year. In addition, within 3 years, asking for another $6 million to be added to capital projects. This looks like the education pie keeps getting smaller and smaller. Until we invest in our staff, we will not have stability. We need to hire and maintain a highly qualified staff as per our strategic plan. If we want stability, we need the teachers that we have professionally developed to stay here. Our students deserve it, and our staff deserves it. Thank you.
Motion made by Mrs. Walker, seconded by Mrs. Lang. By roll call?
Ms. Stiglich?
Aye.
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 Motion carries 7-0. Next on the agenda is the MSBA April Board Report.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Missouri School Boards Association's Board Report for the month of April. We thank you for the opportunity to share some news and information during a few minutes of your board meeting. We begin with a look at the issue of school employees who become sexual predators. MSBA's Center for Education Safety has developed a presentation designed to help school leaders keep students safe from sexual predators. Part of that presentation includes video interviews with former Missouri teachers convicted of sex crimes involving students. Safety specialist with the Center for Education Safety, Gary Moore, conducted those interviews where former school employees shared how they chose and groomed their victims.
They had a student that they thought was having some problems at home, and they wanted to be a counselor to the student. And they were counseling the students. From there, they were flirting after they got comfortable with the student.
Moore adds that while the vast majority of teachers would never be involved in such criminal behavior with students, school districts must be prepared to deal with inappropriate relationships when they occur.
It doesn't matter if you're in a metropolitan area or if you're in a small rural area, it can't happen. There's three categories. It has happened, it is happening, or it's going to happen in your school district. You can't afford to put the blinders on thinking we're small, we're a tight family, this will never happen here.
Moore's presentation is called Crossing the Line When Educators Become Predators, and was part of a recent series of regional meetings sponsored by the Center for Education Safety. School districts in Missouri will soon be able to get federal and state reimbursement for behavioral health services provided to any Medicaid-eligible students. This is good news for Missouri schools, who have reported for some time that one of the biggest barriers to school achievement is unmet behavioral health needs of students. In response to this need, MSBA has advocated for a new state policy that will increase both access to services and funding for those services. Dr. Kim Ratcliffe oversees MSBA's Medicaid Consortium.
And now it's kind of a game changer. So we're really excited about that. But we want for the schools, as well as parents and community providers, to understand how this can work and to really put a plan out there for how we can collaborate differently than we've done in the past, and how we can give children a brighter future through mental health services that can be provided within the context of schools now.
MSBA's Behavioral Health Work Group includes representatives from school districts, administration, state agencies and associations, managed care companies, university professors, community mental health providers, school nurses and counselors, and others. MSBA was instrumental in advocating for the new policy, allowing community providers to bill Medicaid when delivering services in schools or for schools to do so, and when all conditions of the policy have been met. If you've just been elected to your local Board of Education for the first time, congratulations and welcome to school board service. One of the first things you'll want to do is complete the 16 hours of training required by state law and provided by MSBA. Half of the 16 hours can be completed online, with the other half provided at various locations in the state throughout the year. Visit the MSBA website for a complete schedule of training opportunities. There's no cost to participate in the required training. Also, mark your calendar for the annual MSBA Leadership Summit to be held June 2nd and 3rd at the Lake of the Ozarks. Registration information for that event is posted on the MSBA website. Be sure your board is represented at the Spring Delegate Assembly to be held in conjunction with the Leadership Summit. And the annual Safe Schools Conference will immediately follow the Leadership Summit this year. That conference will be held June 4th and 5th at the Lake of the Ozarks. It features a variety of workshops and speakers on school safety issues and is designed for board members, administrators, school resource officers, law enforcement officials, and others that have a role to play in keeping our students safe at school. Registration information for that event also is available through the MSBA website. That's it for this month's edition of the MSBA Board Report. Thanks for allowing us to have some time at your board meeting, and so long from Columbia.
Board, next on the agenda is our curriculum review. It is a first reading for several curriculum tracks there, so please make sure you take a look at that. All right, Mrs. Whitesell, our best practice for this evening.
Thank you. I'd like to introduce Dr. Jennifer Patterson and Jeremy Geisha, who will be presenting on the education support counselors in our district.
Good evening, Board, Executive Cabinet. This is Sherry McGeisha, and she is our district mental health coordinator. And we want to share some information with you this month. We shared on Inspire last month. And so this month we would like to share some information on the work that our educational support counselors are doing with our students who have social emotional needs. Sherry?
There's a growing trend in the mental health services and diagnosis of children in the United States. And so in 1981, 7% of children were diagnosed with a mental health disorder, and that has grown to 19% in 2001. And then within our region, we learned through a parent survey that it even grew more to 33% in 2013. There's numerous reasons for why there's an increase in mental health disorders amongst our children, but I'm just going to tell you a few. There's advancements in mental health research and knowledge. We better understand etiology and symptoms and treatment for mental health. There's advancements in science regarding premature birth and their survival rates. And there's an increase in toxic stress within our families and the ability for parents to be attuned and present in a demanding society. And that has created, as you heard last month, adversity within our children. We've also learned more about ACE scores, which is adverse childhood experiences, and that increases then mental health and mental health disorders. Why it's important to have mental health services in schools is the topic, essentially, of tonight, and why we're placing educational support counselors in our schools. The perspective from a student is that mental health impacts your learning. So it decreases your IQ and reading ability due to delayed development within your frontal cortex, a lower grade point average. You have more days at school where you're absent, and a decreased rate of high school graduation. And we see an increase in suspensions and expulsions for students who've experienced tremendous adversity and toxic stress. It's important to have in our schools also, not just for students, but as well as adults, because it impacts teaching. And so nationwide, approximately 30% of new teachers leave the profession after just 3 years, and 45% after 5. And it increases when there's over 50% of students who receive free and reduced lunch. And in a survey of 2012, it explained that 73% of teachers stated their job was negatively impacted their well-being and ability to teach and feel okay in their profession of teaching children because of the social and emotional needs that kids are having. So based on growing mental health needs, it requires for us to then have experienced and qualified clinical service providers in an educational setting. So the purpose of an educational support counselor is to provide comprehensive mental health services which addresses the barriers that interfere with the student's ability to attend and to achieve. The ESC's purpose is to provide a full continuum of programs and services that helps promote positive mental health outcomes. ESCs also offer treatment regimes to promote positive development, prevent problems, and respond as early as possible. And the ESC also weaves together those school and community resources to provide a holistic approach in improving academic and psychosocial functioning. Currently, our ESC staffing breakdown, we have 2.5 early childhood educational support counselors for our 3 early childhood buildings. We have 10 ESCs within our elementary buildings. We have 1 in our middle school. We have 3 in our 3 high schools, and we have 2 in our alternative schools. That's a total of 18.5 ESCs. So this year, the ESCs designed a tiered system of service to be delivered within each school building. And based on a multidisciplinary model, it requires then for school teaming. So if you look at the larger triangle, all of our schools have a system, it's a multi-tiered system of services. So approximately 80% of students receive what are called universals. So they're the school structures within each building, and that includes guidance lessons. So 80% of students are successful just based on those universals and the structures that are put into schools. When students then increase and need more help to be successful, then they climb to that second middle piece of the triangle and might require counseling services and the teaming between teachers and counselors, and that might include small groups. Then approximately 5% of students will need that ESC support, so a higher level of need for students. So in a general aspect, ESC support is provided through crisis. And unfortunately, we've had several this school year for either student death or teacher death. And so ESCs reported to those buildings to provide support. They also, as we saw in the other slide, provide that tier 3 interventions to the top 5% of students who are most in need. And they assist in the development of student-based plans. So ESCs help to create safety, assessing risk. They help to provide behavioral supports, as well as the writing and creating of trauma plans for our neediest students. And they also provide wraparound services, which weave the home and the school and the community together. That might encompass homelessness, mental health, and an interagency coordination. ESCs often work with students that need many professionals, such as a therapist, a psychiatrist, a medical physician, state services, and it's the ESC's role to help in collaborating with those service providers, assessing if services are meeting the students' needs, and then analyzing possible service gaps. This school year, we divided the ESCs into task groups, to work groups, and they created their own continuum of service in order to have from early childhood through high school the same service delivery as well as product for students. They were divided into 4 work groups. The first group created this tiered system of intervention and created those guidelines for each tier. They also created a referral and intake procedures. The next group created a psychosocial assessment and a social emotional plan. And that means that when they meet one-to-one with a student, they would be able to assess how that child is doing within their community and their success within their home, and then create somewhat would be in more of a medical model, a treatment plan, so that a child would have goals and be able to meet those goals. And we call that a social emotional plan. And that fourth group then created data outcomes and the ability to evaluate services that are delivered through an ESC. The other thing that the ESCs provided attended was a professional learning team. So they met monthly and we staffed cases, we increased their learning, and overall provided cohesion and continuity as a team in the services provided to students and families. The ultimate goal for the tiered system is to make sure that when a child receives services from an ESC, that the services are very similar from early childhood all the way through high school. Even if they move from school to school, that there's continuity within those services. So looking ahead from the 5-year vision, we would like to support ESC's professional growth by attaining clinical licensure. We would also like to provide advanced learning and becoming more trauma informed in both knowledge as well as application for our ESCs as well as our schools. And we would like to create consistent procedures for reentry from hospitalization, for level transitions, for the mandated reporting process, for risk assessments, safety planning, and our homebound program. We would also like to provide additional training on mental illness treatment modalities, such as in the younger grades, we would like to be able to provide play therapies, and in the older grades, DBT, dialectical behavioral therapies, and trauma-based cognitive behavioral therapy, as well as biofeedback and EMDR. So as you can see, there was intentional and effective work that's already been done, and we look forward to what's next as we provide excellent mental health, social and emotional support to our schools, students, and their families. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that presentation. Board, did you have any questions?
I would like to know, how are students identified as being in need of an ESC? How do you identify those kids? And do you do a risk assessment on all the kids or just on certain ones?
Okay, so the first question, there are some support indicators that we know nationally will indicate a need for more risk. So we look at different categories, and mostly the way that we know about a child is by investing in them. So we've talked to their parents, we know them as a student, we collaborate in teams, and that's how we base it on if a child needs a guidance counselor, a child needs an ESC for a certain amount of time, we write a plan around that, and ultimately we want students to be able to move down into that triangle so that they're at the universal place of foundationally, so they don't need mental health supports, that they're embedded within their school. So there's many ways that we look at it. The risk assessment is not done for all students. It's only based on need.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else?
Any other questions, Board? Mr. Lane?
What's happening in the middle schools? I see we have one, and it's alarming. That each elementary school, and they should have a counselor supporting those students, but then we send them to middle school, and I'm assuming some, their plan, they've met goals, they've moved on, but
Sure.
what about those students that have not?
So we have one Francis Howell employee that obviously within that one middle school. And then we contract and work with external partnerships. So that might be Kreider, Youth in Need, that provide mental health services within those schools.
And Mr. Lane, I would just add, you might remember that a central tenet of Proposition Learn was to shore up or support for students with social and emotional needs, and we specifically pointed out identified need to provide additional support for those students. So we're very aware of the challenges that those children face and recognize that our level of support for them is not where it needs to be. And again, one of the identified areas where we would have been able to expand our program in order to meet the identified needs of our kids.
I have one more comment concern. When you mentioned in your report that you work with psychiatrists and everything on developing a plan for the student, do you really explain to them how things are in the school setting and what is working and what is not working? Because I think there's a really big disconnect with our psychiatrists and our psychologists on what's really happening in the schools. Do you have that conversation with them and tell them what's working and not working? And how does that collaboration work?
You know, we collaborate with one agency that truly does a phenomenal job at evaluating students for us and gives us legitimate things that we can do in the schools as part of their suggestions and recommendations. So that's one thing is with which we directly partner with psychiatrists. The other is just to better understand that medication piece and how we can help monitor their symptoms of taking medication. A large part of what ESCs do, though, is the collaboration with those service partners. So it's in understanding that they have a psychiatrist, a diagnosis, the medications that they take, and the therapies that they're receiving.
Just to toot my own horn here at everybody, I want to make sure that when you do talk that medication piece, that you include your school nurses in that conversation.
I completely agree with you.
Because there are so many conversations that you guys we're not having with the school nurses when they can tell you how those medicines are affecting those kids and how they're affecting their learning. It's not happening and it really needs to.
I assure you that we're doing better at that.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate the information. Board, I'll entertain a motion to approve the purchases over $7,500. Motion made by Mrs. Walker, seconded by Mrs. Lang. Discussion?
Yes, can you please remove item number 4 from that list of the purchases over 7,500, please?
So you'd like to amend the motion?
I amend the motion to take off number 4.
Is there a second? Motion made by Mrs. Stiglich, seconded by Mr. Lang. Any further discussion? By roll call?
Ms. Stiglich?
Aye. 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 The amended motion carries 7-0. Board, I'll entertain a motion to approve the purchases over $7,500 for item number 4, Health Master Holding LLC as presented.
Mrs. Cope?
Yes, sir.
The initial vote was to amend the motion. So now you need to vote on the amended motion. So you had to vote to amend the motion.
To amend it,
Now that
now
it's
we have
been
to.
amended, you need to vote to approve the amended motion.
Thank you. So board, I will entertain a motion to, we will now vote, no, we have to have a motion. I've got myself in a circle, I apologize.
You would entertain a motion.
Excuse me, Mr. Supp.
Purchases over $7,500 with the exclusion of item number 4.
That's what the last vote was.
That was to amend the motion.
Okay.
They had an original motion, there was a motion to amend it, they voted to amend it. Now I have to vote on the motion as amended.
Board, I'll entertain a motion to, okay. But I have to do it for Laura to record it. So, board, I'll entertain a motion to amend,
To approve the purchases.
approve the amended motion. Motion made by Mrs. Walker, seconded by Mr. Lang. By roll call.
Mr. Lane?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Motion carries 7-0. So now, board, I'll entertain a motion to approve the purchases over $7,500 for removing, on item number 4, the Health Master Holding LLC as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Lang, seconded by Mrs. Walker. By roll call.
Mr. Lane?
Aye.
Oh, sorry. We can have discussion? Yes. Is there discussion on the item? like to state the reason for abstaining?
I'm an employee of our company.
Thank you. Board, I'll entertain a motion to approve the March 2018 financial statements as presented.
So moved.
Motion made by Mrs. Walker, seconded by Mr. Lane. Discussion? By roll call?
Mr. Lane?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 7-0. Board, I'll entertain a motion to approve the meal and a la carte prices for 2018-2019 school year as presented.
So moved.
Motion made by Mrs. Walker, seconded by Mrs. Lang. Discussion? By roll call?
Ms. Lane?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 7-0. Board, I'll entertain a motion to approve the Facility Strategic Planning Annual Report as presented. Motion made by Mrs. Walker, seconded by Mr. Lang. Discussion? By roll call?
Ms. Walker?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 7-0. Board, I'll entertain a motion to direct the Chief Operating Officer to enter into negotiations with Henner Associates Incorporated to develop a long-term facility master plan for the Francis House School District. Motion made by Mr. Haynes, seconded by Mrs. Walker. Mr. Supple.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Coe. Since we have an opportunity this evening, I'll just review briefly some of the items that we shared with the board at the work session that we held at our last meeting. So the genesis of this idea came as a result of the work of the Strategic Planning Facilities Committee this year. So after studying the district's situation and learning more about the condition of our facilities, a lot of that information was shared with the community during our strategic planning sessions. We looked at the feedback from strategic planning and understood that our community was concerned that we make appropriate investments in our facilities in order to maintain the environments in which our students learn and our staff works. And so the recommendation first came from the Strategic Planning Facilities Committee. We, of course, had a conversation at the administration level, and again, we know that with the buildings being on average 30 years old, and a number of our buildings haven't been built in a relatively short time span in the late 90s as the population here rapidly expanded, that we were soon going to find ourselves with a large number of our buildings needing to have major systems addressed, HVAC, other major systems. And we needed to be able to have a plan that would help us address that in a very strategic and proactive manner. So the concept of long-term facilities planning is that we would go beyond what our facilities committee is able to do, which is to look a year or two perhaps into the future, and to really begin to map out all of the things that need to be addressed within the school district, again, so that we can have a comprehensive plan of addressing all of those needs that are going to come down the road. We began then by issuing a request for proposals, opportunity for architectural firms to share with us the experience they had in doing this work. Through the course of those conversations, I will tell you that all of the firms recognize that the Francis Howell School District is kind of uniquely situated for this work to take place, given the amount of building that took place in a very constrained time, again in the late 90s, and that this is a great way to begin to address that. So we had interviews with 3 different firms, and as a result of that qualification process, arrived at a conclusion to bring a recommendation to you that we begin to work with Honer Associates. One of the things that was provided to the board was an estimate of the number of hours that Honer Associates would work on the project. I know that there's a big number associated with those hours. That's a lot of time. But we have 23 different sites, and again, you know, we might remember from strategic planning, 2.7 million square feet under roof. So there's a lot of work to be done. One thing that I can share with you from our experience working with this company over the course of the projects that were completed with the funds from the 2008 bond issue, they are very accurate in their estimates of the work that needs to be done. For a $78 million project, you know, we spent almost all of that 2008 bond issue money. We had relatively small number of change orders because Honer does such a fantastic job of estimating what the work is. So I know, given prior conversation this evening, that there are concerns about allocation of scarce resources within the school district. But the community has made multi-million-dollar investment in our facilities, and we have thousands of children who are walking the halls and turning on the lights and flushing the toilets and being heated and cooled every day, or 169 days at least of every year. And we need to make sure that we have a safe place and comfortable place for them to work and to learn. And so our recommendation is that we do engage in this process. It will give us an opportunity to really understand at a much deeper level than we are currently able. And we certainly have some talented people who work in our facilities department, but their expertise is not in developing this type of a long-range plan. So I would hope that the board would understand that this really comes as an outgrowth of several community-based efforts, the first being the Strategic Planning Facilities Committee, and the other being the feedback that we got through our development of our new strategic plan, that we need to begin to address our facilities in a very strategic and proactive way. This, I think, is an opportunity for us to do that work. And I think the selection of Honer, the recommendation of Honer, should give the board some assurance that you'll have a very high-quality firm, very committed to being a partner with the district and doing a great job for us, and to do so in what we think will be a very cost-effective way.
Thank you, Mr. Supple. Any discussion, board?
Okay, Kevin, I know the number of hours and the price associated with it. I was a little skeptical at first, and that's why I sent you the email. And now with the long-term and the effects of it, I understand, you know, it was a little forefront, so.
Sure.
Mrs. Walker?
What is the price per hour?
Well, we by statute, and you might, that's why I included the statute, we need to negotiate now with Honer. I will tell you that as we went through selecting an architect for the 2008 bond issue, Honer was very much on the cost-effective end of the spectrum. So I am hopeful that we will be, I'm certain that we'll be able to negotiate a good contract with them. So the process is that we need to conduct qualifications interviews. We need to make a recommendation to the board. The board needs to accept that we will begin to work with an architect, and then I can negotiate the contract. And that process is spelled out in statute. So we will be bringing back to the board a contract that would have specific dollars associated with it. So before we would begin any work, the board will have an opportunity to see what that number is.
Any other discussion, board?
The other piece, Mrs. Cope, if I may, that I would add is that there will be a multifaceted approach to this work. So developing a long-range plan is one part of it, but a natural outgrowth of that is likely to be the need to do some more in-depth design work over one or more projects once we determine that this is something that we want to do, and that may be done in conjunction with a future bond issue of some sort. And again, at that time, all of that work would again come back to the board for review and approval. So there will be multi-layers of opportunity for the board to have conversation about the work before we would proceed. So the first is to really lay out a comprehensive plan of what needs to be done. Then we can begin to dissect how we might approach that work. And of course, the detailed work about developing either conceptual or more detailed schematic drawings associated with any one of those projects, that would be a separate engagement that would be brought back to the board for consideration.
And I would add that I think it's a great idea to look in at Francis Howell, that we spend a lot of time evaluating ourselves, and I think it's always a good idea to have an expert, not that we don't have some expertise here, but an outside view looking in to help us put together that overarching strategic plan. Mrs. Walker?
So is this money in the budget? Have we already budgeted for these approximate funds?
We have not,
Okay.
but we will. I think it would be somewhat presumptive for me to have built into the budget funding for a long-range master plan before the board gave direction that that's what we were going to do.
So I just wanna make sure I understand. We are not approving the expenditure this evening, we are just approving you going into negotiations to bring us back what it will cost approximately.
Yes.
Okay.
And I would say that I think the intent would be that the board feels comfortable that developing a long-range master plan is the direction that we need to move. So, yes, we're not approving the dollars tonight, but I think the commitment would be that we would engage in long-range master planning with the understanding then that the opportunity would exist for us to enter into negotiations with one of the other two firms if you weren't happy with what we were able to negotiate with Honer. So I want to be clear, it's my thought process that this is a commitment on the board's part to begin long-range planning. And that that first step is to negotiate a contract with Honer. If we're not successful, if the board's not happy with what we negotiate with them, we would begin conversations with one of the other two architectural firms, both of which we believe are qualified to do the work. It would be our preference to work with Honer because of our past experience and their excellent work on the prior bond issue.
Mr. Haynes?
Yeah, I guess the one thing that I want to point out, I guess no surprise to anybody in this room, is that Francis Howell is a data-driven district. I think everybody's heard that a few times over the last number of years. And this will allow us to have the data we need to move the district forward. Without this data, we'd be moving forward blindly, and we'd probably make some bad decisions. So that's part of the purpose.
Board, any other questions? Okay. By roll call.
Mr. Lane?
Aye.
Aye.
Wow. Motion carries 6-1.
Nice that you have money for buildings, but not for your staff.
Agenda is strategic planning. So we have our policy review, first reading, policies. The board is going to take a look into it, so make sure you review the policy. Strategic planning still. Updates. So board members, this is the time that we report out on the strategic meetings that we sit on. And this evening, we'll be taking a look at academic strategic planning committee. Mr. Lake.
You have a lot of homework, I'll just say that. As you see next month, if you go back to curriculums that we're going to approve, there's like 5 or 6 there. This last week we did ELA grade 2, grade 7, grade 8, pre-AD for English, for ELA, and so there's quite a bit. If you review the ELA curriculum, it's 200 pages. So make sure you start early if you have questions about the It is quite lengthy, and so we have to go through that. Nicole also talked to us about the new committees for next year. Sorry, Nicole, I'm still kind of confused on what those committees will be, but I'm sure as we get ourselves settled here, we'll figure out what the committees will be next year, because ASPC will be there, but it won't be the same type of thing. Correct? Fair?
ASPC right now is a committee that people apply.
Yes.
So it'll fold into really the concept of one of the advisory committees, but there are 5 advisory committees,
Right.
and the academic component kind of overlaps in multiple goal areas.
So, yeah.
But it'll meet quarterly instead of monthly. But it'll be a large group
Okay.
of advisory folks.
All right. And we have, I think, 6 in May and 6 in June, so we still have quite a few curriculums coming forward that we're going to have to review.
Correct, yes.
That's for me.
Thank you so much. Community relations, Mrs. Lynn. Not to have an April meeting, but I'd like to remind everybody we have a community survey out there that we suggest everyone takes and share, and let us know your thoughts. Great, thank you. And then finance and operations, that was attended by Ms. Ferguson, who is no longer on the board. So Mr. Supple, could you give us an update?
I'd be happy to. Thank you, Mrs. Cope. So during the course of this year, the Finance Committee has been focusing on, our goal this year has been to develop 2 additional non-tax revenue strategies. And so we spent the first few meetings kind of focusing in on what we would do, and we've divided now into 2 work groups. One is focused on better utilization and capitalizing on various excess capacities that might exist within the school system, and the other is on finding external funding sources or donations, if you will. So the capacity group has a number of ideas that they've been considering, and Mr. Schur, as one of the members, has developed a grid that allows people to rank order those projects so that we can begin to narrow down our focus considerably from the broad range of topics that were brainstormed earlier in the year. And then on the outside funding or donation side of the house, Mrs. Ryman has been helping to lead the conversation for that group. And they are focused on work both with our alumni foundation as well as finding better ways to advertise to and capitalize on opportunities within our community to provide support for our building. So we do have some programs available for people to do that, but not a lot of the public is aware of that. So there's more being developed now to help shore up the ways that we can solicit donations from outside or from the broader community to help support in some way the programs within the school district.
Great, thank you, Mr. Supple. And for the rest of us, we report next month. So. Next on the agenda is superintendent comments. Mr. Supple.
Thank you, Mrs. Cole. A lot to celebrate. This is a great time of year because there's so many good things going on. So I know this might seem a little bit long, but it really is some important contributions by our students and staff. So a lot to celebrate. We had 21 students from Francis Howell who are participants at our Lewis and Clark Center, the vocational school, and they earned the right to compete in the Skills USA Missouri State Leadership and Skills Conference. And our students won a total of 15 medals. So we don't often talk about our Lewis and Clark kids, and we're very happy to celebrate their success. Andrew Tollefson is a junior at Francis Howell North, and he was awarded the 2017 Youth Leadership Award that's organized by the Governor's Council on Disability. And that award recognizes young adults with disabilities who demonstrate leadership abilities by going above and beyond in their community. Andrew was chosen because of his involvement in a wide variety of activities that improve the quality of life of people within the state of Missouri who live with disabilities. Logan Goulet of Francis Howell High School was selected as a KMOX Southeast Missouri State University Student of Achievement, and that's one of only 30 students across the metropolitan area who achieved that distinction. They were selected for their outstanding achievement in academics, athletics, the arts, community service, and leadership. All three of our high schools, Francis Howell High, Francis Howell Central High, and Francis Howell North High, were named Project Lead the Way distinguished schools, and only 11 schools in Missouri achieved that distinction, and we have 3 of them, so we're very proud of that accomplishment. We have 2 students who won the right to compete in the annual Post-Dispatch Spelling Bee on March 17th at McKendree University. Rishabh Jain of John Weldon Elementary School and Ubinu Dukapati of Francis Howell Middle School competed with the hopes of moving on to the national level. And so out of the 49 competitors, Mr. Dukapati made it to the final 5, and with over 60,000 national entrants, only the state finalists can proceed to the national spelling bee, so fingers crossed for him. Independence Elementary was recently recognized for their work with character service, and we also learned that they have the distinction of having the highest 5th grade ELA scores in the state and the 4th highest 5th grade math scores in the state. So congrats to the students and the staff at Independence for that great work. I was able to join the board to celebrate our 255 seniors from our various high schools who achieved a 4.0 or above grade average at our recent luncheon. And it is just inspiring to see these young men and women and to hear what their future plans are. We certainly celebrate their success within our school system, but it is encouraging to know that these young individuals are going to go out and do great things for not just the Francis Howell community, but for the United States as a whole. Just exciting to hear the work that they're engaged in. We do a lot to celebrate things going on in our community, and part of that has been an outreach to the senior members of our community. We've created that Senior Pals program that's been in operation for a while, and we have one more event this year, and that's coming up on May 11th at 5:30 p.m. It will be a choir concert at Francis Howell Central. So things will begin as they have with a light dinner that's been provided by our food service company, Sodexo, and then they'll have an opportunity to hear our choir concert. So we invite our seniors to join us for that event. We do have a parent speaker series that we've been doing for the past couple of years, and most recently we had a presentation by the Megan Meyer Foundation on cyberbullying, and over 70 parents attended that event. So that was the last one of the year, but we continue to see great interest in that, another way that we're reaching out to our community. And then finally, we will have another way to celebrate the first Monday in May, when we induct another 12 individuals into the Howell of Fame. So the Howell of Fame celebrates outstanding achievements for volunteers and for staff. And in addition to recognizing our Howell of Fame winners, we will also recognize our District Teacher of the Year, our Teachers of the Year, our Support People of the Year, and our retirees. So we look forward to celebrating with you and with all of those individuals on May 7th.
6th. May 6th. Whatever the first Monday.
The first Monday in May. Thank you, Mrs. Cove.
Thank you, Mr. Sutton. Next on our agenda is board request. Is there any upcoming topics the board would like to discuss? Mrs. Walker?
I'd like to know if I can just make a comment. It's not about that. So, Missouri Realtors has Dr. Bernice King, who's Martin Luther King's youngest daughter, coming to Ameristar to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Fair Housing Act. And so I just wanted to invite, it is open to the community. We have some students that are going to be attending, and I just wanted to put that out there that if anybody would like to attend, 10 a.m. at Ameristar on the 24th.
May 24th? April 24th. So board, any requests for additional agenda items or items to be discussed in the future? upcoming meetings, let's first look at the May 17th meeting. Any adjustments to that agenda this time? Looked like there was some discussion, so we're good right now. Okay, thank you. Board, let's take a look at the June 7th meeting. Any adjustments to that agenda at this time? Okay. Board, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn to closed session.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mrs. Walker, seconded by Mr. Lane. By roll call.
Mr. Lane?